Dr. Cliff Faver, and today we're going to talk about a topic that's an enigma to a lot of people, and that's skincare. You know, one of the things you have to realize when we're dealing with the skin and hair of our pets is that the skin is the largest organ in the body, but yet a lot of times it's the organ that we forget to take care of the most. And we do a lot of things that probably are detrimental to the hair and skin, and then we end up having problems. Actually, the number one payout in pet insurance is skin problems. So today I'd like to take care of some of the education part of it, so you understand the science, because I think if you understand the science, then a lot of times we can do a much better job of taking care of it. So first thing that I want to talk about is the fact that skin is the largest organ. Any living organism needs four things, and that is we need water, we need food, we need protection, and we need oxygen. Now realizing when we talk about that, food, water, protection, and oxygen, what does that mean? Well, in the skin's term, we have a layer there that is fatty acids and oils, or it's also called sebum. This is our protective layer. This is the waxy coating that we have on our skin. Now realizing pets are very different than humans. Humans, we have calluses that protect us. We have a thick skin. The reality in our dogs is they have hair. If we take away the hair, that skin underneath is baby butt soft. And so it's very vulnerable to a lot of toxins. It's very vulnerable to bacteria, fungus, and everything else. So when we have this sebaceous layer, it provides a barrier. Skin as a whole protects so things can't get out of our body and gives us body structure, but it also is to prevent things from coming in. Now, when we bathe the dog, basically we need to get the dirt and debris out of the sebum. The reality is that dirt and debris is only going to be on the surface. It's kind of liken it to sticky paper. It's going to stick on the surface. It will not penetrate this because that's a very thick barrier. So reality, when we bathe the dog, all we need to do is take off that top layer. Unfortunately, a lot of our shampoos, and an example, a lot of people use Dawn dishwashing soap. That's a heavy degreaser. That will defat and take too much of the sebaceous layer off, which what that does is we take it down to the basic layer of skin. Once we do that, that's very irritating. That's where we get into a lot of our skin problems. So it's very, very important that we use a more mild shampoo. This is especially important when we're dealing with puppies because they don't produce a lot of natural sebum, so they are very, very vulnerable. You wouldn't take your baby and wash it with Dawn dishwashing soap. In fact, most of you would not even use it on yourself, but there again, tons and tons of people will use it to clean their dogs. So very, very dangerous when you do that because we take it down to that very basal layer. The other thing is a lot of people like to use human products to wash their dogs. The reality is the pH of human products is very different than dogs. On dogs, their skin pH is around 6.5. Humans is 4.5 on the scale. So that means it's considerably more acidic. When you put an acid on a skin that's a little more sensitive, you're actually going to burn it. And to put it relative, water is 7.0. So their skin pH is very, very close to water. So using human products does not help either. That a lot of times will irritate it. Let's talk about the basic structure of hair and skin. And I'm not an artist, I'm a veterinarian, so you have to bear with me a little. But dogs have primary hairs. Then they have the skin where the primary hair is held. This is called a follicle, and each follicle has a gland that secretes sebum into this little cup, and then it will cover the surface of the skin. It also covers the surface of the hair. This is the protective mechanism that we have so that dogs are able to dry off quickly in the wilds. If you've ever seen a Labrador retriever that's got a good hair coat, he jumps in the water, he shakes off. and he's totally dry. Because this would be very similar to an oil slicker coat. Everything sheds off and is great. These hairs also have plaques to them, and microscopically you can see these plaques when you look at it, realizing each hair type is very different, and their hair is very different than human hair. The forensic pathologists, when they're looking at crime scenes and stuff, they can tell whether it's dog hair or human hair just based on the structure of the hair. This follicle also has a muscle here called the erecti pili muscle. And what the purpose of that muscle is to raise and lower that hair so that we can control temperature. This is their air conditioning or their heater, depending on what the temperature is and where they have that. So those are very, very important structures when we look at the overall. Here's what happens when we use a lot of the shampoos that are more of a detergent. And when I say detergent, how can you tell that? Typically, the more it suds, the more detergent that you have in it. So if you have a shampoo that has lots of suds to it, that means it has a lot of detergent. Now, it'll do a wonderful job cleaning the dog, but let's look at what happens to the actual structure and the skin when we do that. So first of all, when we strip that with a heavy detergent, we're actually leaving this skin bare naked. We're taking off all that sebum. That's all the protection there. When we do that, then the skin dries out. Very similar to what your hands will feel like if you're bathing dogs on a regular basis with a bad shampoo, or if you're using degreasers like in car parts, any solvents and things like that. Washing your hands on a regular basis with any type of dishwashing soap will very commonly cause your hands to dry and crack. Once this happens, this makes that skin very vulnerable to bacteria, fungus, viruses, actually ticks and fleas also. And people say, well, how could it make it prone to ticks and fleas? Well, let's go back to our structure here. If you have a sebum layer here, a tick or flea, what they do is they actually inject a little substance in there that's an irritant that will cause a pool of blood, and essentially they stick a straw in it and suck the blood out. Well, if you have a sebum layer here, they have to go all the way through there, and that's a lot of work. If we strip the sebum layer there, then it's a piece of cake to get to it. It's a smorgasbord. Sometimes it's already cracked and bleeding because it's so irritated to start with. So by keeping that sebum layer healthy, then we do much better. Case in point, a lot of the groomers, veterinarians, and you may be in this situation, have one dog that has ticks or fleas and the other dog doesn't. More than likely, it's because that dog has a problem with sebum. They just don't have enough to protect there. This sebum is also very important when you use pour-on tick and flea products for the simple reason they are an alcohol carrier that mixes with the sebum, and as the alcohol dries, it leaves little particles of medication around to repel and or kill ticks or fleas. So if you have no sebum, your products are not going to work. And if you read the instructions on most of those products, they will tell you that you shouldn't bathe or shouldn't put the product on 2 days before you bathe or 2 days after you bathe. Once you do that, they'll actually go down into the follicles and stay on the surface, and they will kill the ticks and fleas. Now, not all products are equal, but that's the general rule how some of them will work. So let's go back to our example where we've stripped all the fatty acids, oil, or sebum off the skin. This would be, realizing we talked about the sebum actually is where your water is on the skin, your food is, and your protection. So if I lose these three parts here, all I've got left to live on is oxygen. The best comparison I can give on that is if we stripped you naked, put you outside, didn't give you food and water, and expected you to survive. Realizing you wouldn't do a very good job. Therefore, if we leave this naked and don't do anything to replace that, we are putting the skin in a very bad situation. What you commonly see with this is a couple of days with dry skin, we start scratching, we start itching. Sometimes we get bacterial infections, sometimes we get fungal infections, and more than likely we're going to see an animal that ends up at the veterinarian with what looks like allergies. Now the reality is it may not be allergies. It may be just dry skin and may have a bacterial fungal infection, but those are usually secondary to the irritation. So if we can stop the irritation, hopefully we can stop the process. Now, a part that a lot of people don't realize is what's happening at the hair at the same time. Remember we talked about that there's plaques in the hair. Well, when you strip all the oils off the plaque, or those plaques, this will actually open up like a Christmas tree. So, why is that important? Well, a couple of different things. When you open it up like that, this hair is actually going to lose water. We're actually losing moisture out of that hair, which will cause it to dry out. Now, you don't have to be too astute to compare these two and realizing which one's going to tend to mat quicker, because these two are going to naturally stick together very much like Velcro. If you've ever seen a dog that's impacted, what you see is that Velcro actually ends up like a zip tie. It gets tighter and tighter and tighter, and as it dehydrates, then it gets harder and harder and harder. So we're actually creating a lot of our mats if we've left them in this status. The other thing is a lot of groomers don't like using conditioners in this situation, because the conditioners are what we call emulsifiers. And what an emulsifier does is it's actually made to coat the skin or hair and hold the moisture in, very similar to what hand lotions, a lot of your hand lotions do. The problem with it, just like hand lotions, the reason you use hand lotion is because your skin's dry. Well, if I put something in that's a barrier there, then I still have dry skin. In fact, we call those a hydrophobic. It repels water. So we never get ahead of the dryness here. So if we put something like that, it coats it up. A lot of times when it gets wet, it's very gooey, slicky, and nasty. And so it's very, very hard to dry. In an ideal situation, we want to put a product on there that's going to hydrate that hair. It actually is going to bring moisture in the skin so that we can boost up the health of the skin versus drying it out. So that's very important. Now, the other thing to look at is in a drying process, every one of these little crevices are going to trap water. So it's very, very hard to dry a dog that's in this state. You can just imagine our example of our Labrador Retriever. If we're in this, what I call the fluff state, we jump in the water, we're more like a sponge. We're not going to be able to shake it all off. And so now, a lot of times the dogs that are jumping in cold water can't regulate their temperature. So we have a problem there. The other thing that we need to think about, and this happens a lot of times, we groom our dog today and within 2 or 3 days, they're dirty again. Well, if you strip all the oils off there, it looks beautiful for the short term. But what happens on the long term, this acts like a feather duster and it's going to trap dirt, debris in there. And actually they get dirty very, very quickly. Now, another aspect that a lot of people don't think about is the fact that the hair is for protection. It's to protect us against mechanical type problems, but it's also a protection against sunlight. So if we have this opened up like that, that would be like using this as a sunscreen. The sun's going to go ahead and shine through there and you're still going to get burnt. This is all that back together. Now, a lot of you have seen dogs that are black that actually turn kind of a silvery color or sometimes even red. The silvery color, if you can just imagine, is this right here. We're not reflecting sun the same way. If we can close that cuticle back up, now we're going to get our darker colors back again. The red color that you see is actually sunburn of the pigments. There's actually pigments inside this hair shaft that we've damaged on that. Once those kind of things occur, we cannot fix that. You're actually going to have to let the hair grow out until that damage is taken care of. So we talked about that we created the situation by using heavy detergents, The reality is the fix to this, even if you use a heavy product. Now, the goal here is if we only take off the top section, we've always got a little sebum there. But if we've taken it clear down, now we have to do more work to try to take it back. But the secret here is to use the correct type of conditioner that will actually replace what we lost. So if we take off some of the sebum, we need to add sebum back. So it's very important to use plant-type derivative conditioners that are hydrating. And by doing that, we replace the layer here, as well as if we're hydrating this, we're going to cause it to enlarge, and then we take a boar bristle brush and we can flatten that back down. If we do that, then we can take it back to a more natural state. Realizing, as I said, this gets dirty usually in a couple of days, this should last a couple of weeks in your grooming. So when you go find a groomer, it's important that they're using products that are positive on that. If they're using things that are harsh to the coat or are not healthy to the coat, you may find yourself spending a lot of money with a veterinarian trying to correct the problem. And as a veterinarian, I'm going to tell you a good percentage of the cases I see are no more than dry skin, but from a clinical aspect, they all look like allergies. So my advice to everyone is make sure you use a good product so that you're not spending a whole bunch of money with your veterinarian.